What is going on, everybody, and welcome to my review for Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This is the sequel to the first film that came out back in 2023 that is based on the survival horror indie video game darling turned mega mainstream franchise Five Nights at Freddy's, and that first film turned out to be a major financial success for Blumhouse, so it was no surprise that we would eventually be getting future installments. However, despite that box office success, it is a movie that critics were not too favorable to, and the reception amongst horror fans was split, with fans of the video game seeming to get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but people that aren't too familiar with the video game series mostly found it to be just a mediocre at best mascot horror film. Me personally, I would place myself somewhere in the middle of these two groups. I've never played any of the video games, but I have watched walkthroughs of a few of them on YouTube over the years, but I'm still far from what I would consider to be a fan of the franchise. So I went into that first movie with the typical expectations that I would have for a movie adaptation of a video game, and I actually ended up being quite surprised by how much I enjoyed it. Now, it wasn't some 5 out of 5 masterpiece or anything like that, but I do think it served as a solid entry point for younger audiences to get introduced to the horror genre, and so judging it from that lens, I think I was able to have a lot more fun with this movie than I thought I would be able to. But even though I am positive towards that first movie, it didn't really do anything to raise my expectations for its sequel, because it did have a little bit of a lightning in a bottle feel for me, and given the track record of these video game movie adaptations, there's just not a lot of success there, especially sustained success over multiple movies. So I still went into this with pretty low expectations because I just wasn't confident, or I didn't have faith in their ability to recapture the magic that I felt they had with the first one. And unfortunately, that hunch that I had going in proved to be correct, and that poor track record struck again, because I would say, aside from one or two things, this was a far more inferior product and showing on almost all levels. The only positive that I can really say about it is that it probably is a scarier movie. I think the younger crowds will think so, especially because in terms of quantity, there are a few more effective scares in here, and I do think it pushes the boundaries of that PG-13 rating a little bit more than its predecessor did. Specifically, I think this movie's best and scariest moments are the ones dealing with the marionette character, and even more specifically, the moments where McKenna Grace is involved, because when I break this movie down, across the board, the look of this character and the performance from this actress are really the only aspects of this movie that I came away being impressed with. After that, though, there's really not much that I got out of this movie, and there's a lot of areas where you just see a dramatic decline in quality in comparison to that first film. Looking at the cast, aside from McKenna Grace, who I just mentioned, and I guess the limited screen time that we get with Matthew Lillard, no one here really seems to be bringing their A game. And I don't know if it's the performer that's the problem, or if it's the writing that they're having to deliver. It's probably a mixture of both, because there are just so many moments in this movie from beginning to end where either the line delivery or the line that's being delivered just falls flat, and it's just really surprising because it's pretty much the same cast, and these are not issues that I experienced with them just one movie prior. The characters of Vanessa and Abby get a lot more focus in this movie, and several times throughout it they both display severe gaps in their logic. There are certain revelations regarding Vanessa's path that get snuffed out just as quickly as they're introduced, and then you get to the character of Mike, played by Josh Hutcherson, who was the lead in the first movie, and he feels like he could just be erased from this sequel and it wouldn't make a difference. His sole reason for being here is to deliver fan service through Easter eggs and references. And if you're like me and you're not all that familiar with the finer details of the games, then a lot of these are just going to go right over your head. I could tell that something was being referenced or shown, but I have no way of knowing what it is exactly. And this was an issue that was in the first movie as well, but it felt far more balanced there than it does here. And because all of the humor in this sequel is reliant upon these Easter eggs and references, I found this movie to be far less comedically effective as well. Which segues into what I feel this movie's biggest issue is, and that is that it has zero focus. It's a Frankenstein creation of 4 different plot lines happening simultaneously, with none of them getting the proper attention that they need to be fully fleshed out. And so you're left with a movie that feels like it strictly exists to be an IP vehicle constructed to capitalize off of the financial success of the first movie and the established brand that came before that. It's just an excuse to get these beloved animatronics back up on the big screen to please and get money out of younger audiences, parents, and people that enjoy the video games. And if you fall into either of these categories and you do enjoy this movie, that is fantastic and totally fine. I am not here to yuck anybody's yums, but I can only speak from my perspective. And from my perspective, this was a far worse movie than the first one. It doesn't do anything that I feel a sequel should do. It doesn't improve upon any of the issues that first movie had, and so that just means no lessons were learned from it. But also everything that was good and enjoyable about that movie is just not here, despite having the same cast and characters involved. So unfortunately, this is not a movie that I can recommend you go check out, because when I look at it, there's just nothing here to make me feel like this movie is anything other than a waste of your time and money. The only people that I can imagine will enjoy it are below the age of 14, because I don't even know if adult fans of the franchise will feel like this sequel does the IP any justice, as it's just an Easter egg fest that relies upon the lowest hanging of fruit that it possibly can. But there you have it. Those are all of my thoughts on Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It's a skip for me, but make sure you get down in the comments below and tell me what you thought about this movie. If you're into movie reviews, make sure to also consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel as well. I would love to have you here, and I will see everybody in my next one. Peace.